Hello, everybody. My name is Rugare Gomo, and I'm a high performance coach. Welcome to your business summit, where we have experts ready to help you navigate your life and business during these unprecedented times. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to Kate Riordan, the director of Power to Process. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Rugare. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for making yourself available today to be a huge contribution to the community, particularly during these uncertain, unprecedented times, which I'm calling the New World Order.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. And so a little bit about Kate, about this. Kate is a person. We're so keeping this in. My mind went blank. This is what happens when you're trying to bring
Correct.
perfection.
I'm a person. That is correct.
Which is perfect instead of a business summit.
Mhm.
But Kate, Kate has a superpower of really helping business owners help them articulate any problems that they're dealing with in their business and bringing clarity to the problem that they're dealing with, and also creating an implementation plan with actions to take. And that's what your superpower has been. You have helped me personally using your superpower in bringing clarity to some of my business issues where the conversations and your skill set has really made a huge difference to elevating systems and processes in my company. And I think that would be very, very, very useful inside of this new world order, to share your superpower and your skill sets with other people.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And in particular, we're talking about how to actually nurture your teenagers while also working from home,
Yes.
which is kind of like not a usual topic would have inside of, the kinds of conversations you typically had before the New World Order.
Correct. Look, it's absolutely something that I've seen a lot with my clients and even just my friends and family, is that we can't ignore this issue because it's having a huge impact on people's productivity, their ability to be there for their families and their kids, and to support them through what's a really difficult time, as well as delivering professionally. And so I've started to talk about it more and more because it really is it's an employee issue. And I think before now that has always been in the domain of, well, that's the parents' problem of what happens if they're working from home, whereas now it's a collective problem. And so I'm really excited to talk it through with you tonight.
Fantastic. And one of the things that you also helped myself and my team as well is we've always been using digital, because my team is actually dispersed out through Australia and sometimes in different parts of the world. And one of the comments that you made was, it's not just important to have flexible working arrangements or being able to use, video, but also ensure that as an employer, I've also empowered my team to be able to have their work environment work, whether when they have their kids or their teenagers at home. And that was a really great conversation for my company. So it's also a great pleasure that you can then use your superpower of bringing clarity, systems and processes on the situation we're dealing with in the New World Order.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great. So what then do you say are some of the main challenges, of parents and teenagers right now?
Look, I've also included sort of in tonight's topic tweens, because I have one. I have an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. I should preface this whole conversation by saying I'm not an expert in this. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a mother, a business owner. I work from home. I have 2 children that are now doing online learning from home. And as you said, I have the ability to bring my skill set to break this problem down into manageable chunks, to try and brainstorm with you and to share with you some tips that I have on what people can do as they navigate this. But my absolute first comment to make is it is hard. It's really hard. And the challenges for me have been, how do you show up every day and deliver what you need to deliver, whether that be because you've promised a client or you have a manager that expects it from you. How do you show up and do that and still meet the needs of your children? And whether that be their emotional needs, it might be technical needs, it might be I don't understand something needs, it might be I'm hungry, it's lunchtime, it could be I've got a question, and it's really, really challenging. And I think we have to change our mindset a little bit on what's possible, but also there's things that we can do to support our teenagers through this tricky, difficult time.
Very powerful in how you've articulated that. Particularly, one of the issues that you're actually communicating is we have a way of trying to be professional.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we're all working from home, the mindset of what being professional looks like amongst everything that's happening is altered. And we now need to look at how do we think about and approach our business activities differently inside of working in a different environment now.
Correct. Absolutely. And I think for me, and I think even every day I have a new realization of what works and what doesn't work.
Great.
And for me, I realize that I have to redefine my definition of what professional is, because it's an outdated model of looking nice, dressing well, going to a nice office, being professional, presenting an image of you've got it all together. And I think we need to examine the pedestal that we're trying to put ourselves on in a time where it's not helpful, and it actually creates more anxiety. And I'll give you even an example today. My son was doing his first sort of proper day of online learning since the school holidays, and he was really struggling with just the flow of it and understanding how it worked, and he had questions and he didn't want to be there and he wanted to be with his friends, and there was a whole range of things that were showing up for him, and at the same time on that, and I wanted to be there for him, I wanted to help him through it, but at the same time I had an expectation in my head as to what I was going to be delivering, what was expected of me, what a good day's work looked like, and what the outputs that I needed to get, and they were in direct contrast with each other. So if I didn't, and I realized that I needed to let go of those expectations of what was going to be possible in my day, or even just in that moment, it didn't mean that it was going to, and I love catastrophizing. I love saying, well, if it's like this now, it's going to be like this for the rest of the day or the rest of the time that we're in lockdown. And I think I was able to say to myself, this is just right now, and this is what he needs is my attention, and he needs me to get him to a place where he is okay with what's going on right now. And that might take 10 minutes or it might take an hour, but this is where I need to be, and there will be time for me later to attend to my work. And I think the minute that I made that that I could separate the two, because then I wasn't heaping my frustration of not getting my work done on top of what was already a really frustrating situation, if you like. So that's what I did, which worked well. And it was painful. And I think I started off by saying this is hard. And the story that I wanted to share with you, just so people are really clear that I'm no expert at this, was at one stage today when I was trying to be on a Zoom call, and the person on the call said to me, I can't really hear what you're saying because your children are talking next to you. And I'd set myself up next to my 11-year-old so I could support him as he needed it. And so then I said, all right, hold on, and I'll move rooms. And I put my microphone on mute and my video on so they couldn't see or hear me. And as I'm walking up the hall, and I was trying to explain to the kids that I needed them to be a little bit respectful of my time and all that. And we got into a bit of an argy-bargy. And as I walked into the bedroom to slam the door, I yelled something like, fine, I don't care if you fail school, go on the dole, see if I
And there his future is created for life.
I thought, am I really the best person in this conversation?
But what you just communicated is so powerful, because it's not just you who's experiencing this. This is happening in millions of homes, if not billions of homes around the world right now.
It is.
So, and everybody has their own version of that, and it's so relatable.
Yeah.
Like,
And I'm
and
a massive believer. I love sharing my epic fails because I think it makes people realize, because what we don't need to do on top of all this stuff that's going on is have a perfect version of what we should be doing in this environment, because every single friend of mine that I've spoken to that's going through the same thing is having the same experiences. I just spoke to a friend just the other day who said, I was never meant to be a teacher, and she's got a little person, and and I think it's really challenging, and I think we don't need perfection and expectation on ourselves. And I think we're the harshest critics of this is the way my day should run and this is what it should look like, versus the reality of you are going to be in the middle of presenting something in an important pitch, and you're going to have a child be standing right here asking you a question that is so ridiculously mundane and could have waited, and they're not going to leave, and you're going to have to deal with that and the frustration around that. And I'm learning to just say, excuse me just for 1 minute while I tend to this question, pause, mute, I'm going to talk to you in 5 minutes, or whatever it might be, and so I think it's having that flexibility of thinking is really important.
It's great. And I think that the way we just set that up is perfect, because we just had to add imperfect beginning to the business summit, and we're leaving that in because that's being human, and there's nothing to touch up about that. And I think that's what many people are dealing with the stress, the anxiety, and the mental health issues, is trying to get it perfect. I need to be perfect. I can't have my kids interrupt. That's really annoying. So that's really powerful, what you just communicated about allowing us just to be imperfect. But we can have tools to deal with that powerfully, which is perfect now to then discover from you, what are some of your tips then in dealing with working from home as a business owner and having your teenagers at home?
Sure. So my first tip is around understanding that one size fits all approach isn't going to work. So I can't give you a list of what you must do for your child and that will work for you. You have to, and I can't even have one size fits all approach in my house, because I have two opposite children. One is quite, I have one child that if the question was provide 3 dot points as to why Christopher Columbus was an amazing explorer, I have one child who would give me 10 dot points and another one that would try and get away with giving me 2. So when you have different children, there's all the colours of the rainbow and all the different requirements out there of what children need in terms of support and help and assistance. So whatever you come up with has to be, you're going to be the best person there is to come up for a solution for your child. And so that's my sort of first thing, is look at the needs of your child and build something around that. And I'll talk to you a little bit more detail of what that might look like.
That's great. That's already so freeing, because already just by saying that I don't have to have one size fit all, it's just so freeing. Then you get to discover exactly what that will look like for myself, for yourself on a day-to-day basis, really. And that's the shift of the mindset there, that there isn't a right answer. You can't get this wrong.
There isn't. You can't get it wrong, and all you can keep doing is fine-tuning. And I think that's what I'm learning, is that I have an idea and I put it into practice and it doesn't work, or it works a little bit, so then I fine-tune it and then I try something different. And unfortunately, that's just the way that it is. And I think the quicker you just get into that iteration of what's working well for me today, and I've been looking at a little bit on the I guess you call it like the rigidity scale. So there are some kids that your solutions and your ideas and your structure can be quite sort of flexible, and it might be you have some non-negotiables that you put out there for one child, and each day I want you to do a little bit of exercise, and I want you to have some screen-free time, and I want you to have some connection, and I want you to eat well. But that might be all that you need, because that child can take that and they can run with that. And then at dinner time, you can talk about what they did in those spaces and celebrate them achieving that balance in their life. Whereas you have other children that they actually might need quite a specific timetable, that on Monday you're going to do half an hour basketball practice. On Tuesday, you're going to go for a run around the block 3 times, because they don't have the ability to self-regulate, to make those decisions for themselves. So I think that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying know your child, know what's going to work for them. But when you're having that conversation and when you're making those decisions, as much as you can, have the conversation with them. Don't impose your thoughts on them without involving them. I mean, teenagers are old enough and, they're quite willful and they've got very definite ideas, and it's about encouraging them to think holistically about their health. And I have got, some ideas around that too, but I think just really have the conversation and be flexible on that scale of, well, how flexible versus rigid does your structure for them need to be?
It's very powerful. And really, I hear getting into your child's world. It's really important to really get into their world, not come from your own perspective, but really understanding what their needs are, what's going to make a difference for them, what's going to empower them. And once we know that, then we can then create a plan that can work for them.
Yeah. And I think for the plan to be really successful, you just need to understand what your boundaries are, or what your non-negotiables are, or what you want, what is going to be the best thing for their physical and mental well-being. Because I think sometimes kids don't prioritize that. And I know that if I left my son to say, you can do what you like today, he would spend 13 hours playing Fortnite. He absolutely would. He would think he'd spent 2 hours, but it would have been 13 hours playing Fortnite. And the reason I know that is because that may or may not have happened just recently. It was like the best day that we had at our house, because it was so quiet and peaceful and we all did what we wanted, but that is not in his interest long term to allow that. And so whereas my daughter is much more sort of proactive about about doing exercise and eating well and having screen-free time. So I think you just have to understand what your non-negotiables are, and I'll share what mine are. And again, not perfect, not ticking these boxes every day, but this is, I guess, the intention that I'm going into this with my children is that every day I would like them to do some exercise. I would like there to be some form of family connection. So whether that's family dinner, which I try to have most nights, and sometimes, people just don't feel like it. They just want to veg on the couch, and I allow that too. But there's some form of family connection. It could be a family walk, or just all catching up at lunchtime and having a sandwich together outside if the weather's nice. It could be another non-negotiable is some kind of friend connection, which isn't terribly difficult because that's, teenagers naturally and teens like to do that. So it's about enabling that and especially for the younger ones and helping them make sure that they do have that connection with their friends. I've also tried to implement another 2 non-negotiables, which I'm having not as much success as I would like. It's an ongoing battle. The first one is screen-free time, which I'm trying to, have sort of an hours in a day that are screen-free, which to encourage creativity, reading, quiet time, nature, whatever they want to do within that. There's real flexibility there. And then the other one is being helpful. So sometimes that I might be quite prescriptive around that, to say today I would like you to vacuum the car or unpack the dishwasher or water the garden. And other days I might say I want you to be helpful. Do you want to choose what that looks like? These are the jobs I've got available, or is there something else? And so tonight my son is cooking us dinner while I'm on this call.
Wonderful. I should be over there. I can't jump through the screen. That'd be breaking all the social distancing rules in every way. That's fantastic. And what would you say then to families where they have found it difficult getting into their teenage son's world? Some parents haven't actually been spending lots of time with their kids, so there's already a disconnect. And now we're having some families always in each other's space. So it's very difficult sometimes for them to connect and create that. What would be some of your suggestions?
I think it's a balancing act between allowing teenagers their space to be in their world as they want it to be versus encouraging them to be in your world as you want it to be. And I think, we have to remember that the role of a teenager is to leave the nest, to explore the world, and to form their own identity and to navigate the world of friendships and relationships and all the good and bad that the world has to offer. And that we're meant to be, the family is a place where they come back to when they need to rest and recuperate or reinvigorate themselves. That's how I like to look at it. So in these times when we're sort of in lockdown, it's like, how do they do that when they're just sort of here the whole time? And how they do that is through, unfortunately, a lot of online ways, whether it be online gaming, which I actually am a massive fan of those online games, as long as they stay within the time wedge that is healthy. And what happens is that they don't. And so that's where the negotiation is, well, how many hours is healthy versus unhealthy? And I've been a little bit more flexible. I mean, I am on the more flexible end of that anyway, compared to a lot of my son's friends' parents, but I've been even more flexible because that is one of the ways that he absolutely connects with his friends. And if you listen to them, they really have a lot of fun, and they're talking and they're playing the game together and they're helping each other out and they're sharing guns and grenades and they're, saving people and all this stuff you really want your 11-year-old to be playing with, guns and grenades. But it's, I think that there is an absolute place for it. And so I think it's about being realistic and allowing them that space, which I think not sort of being on their back too much about it. But then the flip side is really standing firm on the family time commitments. So whether that be an online Zoom call with a family dinner with the grandparents or just family dinner at home, like we do family games nights, we do family movie nights. And often there's a little bit of grumbling and a little bit of, because they would prefer to be doing something else with their friends or, or watching their own program. But if you persevere and you push through it, they genuinely always love it at the end. And it's so important for them to feel like they're part of the family unit, even though they might not want to. It's really important, and at the end you're often rewarded by, oh, that was really great, or just lots of laughter. Like I try and keep things really light and fun, and like last night we were trying to do funny facial expressions with our face, and my 14-year-old was crying with laughter at I was trying to make my bottom lip quiver, which is actually a lot more difficult than you think.
Show us.
I couldn't do it. I was like, and so she was crying with laughter, and I'm like, you know what? If she just has one good laugh a day with me, I'm like, it's the family connection bucket. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but you must persevere, because left to their own devices, they will just retreat into their room, and every now and then you got to bring them out and you drag them around the block for a family walk, and even if you get grunting and not terribly appreciative, it still is having a positive impact on their relationship with you and their health and, a whole range of things. So
it's fantastic. What I really hear and taking away from that is also just being lighthearted with it all as well.
Yeah, I think especially now, and I think there's a lot of fear and a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety out there, and kids really pick up on that, but they can't always articulate it, but they just it's like they feel it in their cells of their body. And so I think to make things fun, and whether that's by having, fun music on, or having, a board game, or, like there's so many sort of fun games that you can play out there, and even free ones on the internet, that you just have to make a little bit of effort. I'm lucky because my 11-year-old loves family games night, and so he's often the one that will grab the Monopoly or grab the categories or grab the 5-second rule game or whatever, and but it always ends up that we're laughing and we're having fun and we're connecting, and even if it's for 10 minutes, it doesn't have to be, but you have to make the effort, and I can honestly tell you a lot of the time I don't want to, I don't want to play the game, I just want to eat dinner, and then I just want to go and watch my program on Netflix. Every time I make the effort, or I just say, I know this is important to my family and do it, I'm rewarded by having a really good night. There's the occasional night where everyone fights and, Monopoly becomes a bloodbath, but it's pretty good.
Reminds me of my childhood. Very competitive with Monopoly.
Yeah.
How do you then enforce boundaries when your teenage children breach those boundaries?
Oh, gosh, if I had the answer to that, I'd be a multimillionaire.
So, but
It's,
particularly like you're working from home, you're having meetings. And so, I hear that you've already had conversations with, your children or your teenagers,
yeah,
and then something's going to happen.
yeah,
So, which is inevitable.
yeah, yeah. So
How are you approaching that then with the people you're doing business with and as well with your family?
sure. So with the family, it's about not letting it go. So you do what you need to do to just resolve the issue then and there, and that generally sort of is resolved by, well, we will talk about this later. And then and sometimes depending on who the child is and the age and what the issue is, sometimes you do need to say, I'm terribly sorry. This is not how I like to run meetings that you're going to have. Can we just take a 5-minute break? Like there's an issue has arisen and I need to go and deal with it, or can we reschedule this Zoom call, or can you just give me 1 minute and I'll be back, and you just mute yourself and off you go. Because I think that's happening all over the place, and I think we need to, and I've done the flip side where I've been in meetings and someone else's child has come in and I have called it really clearly. I've said, just so you're really clear, I don't mind that your child's there, and if you need to attend to your child, that's absolutely fine by me. I'm happy to pause the conversation and answer the questions because I get it. I understand what it's like. I understand this isn't your preference, but it's also the reality that you're in. So don't think for a minute that I'm judging you. You do what you need to do and we will get through this meeting. I just say it because I'm like, that's what I want people to say to me. I want people to say to me, I'm not judging you by what's going on at the moment. We get that this is a tough situation and that this is the reality of what it's like. So that's the first thing. So in terms of setting the boundaries for the kids, it's about having that conversation. And I've even said to my kids from today, and we're going through a teething period, and I think people need to understand that for the first couple of weeks, it's a teething period of everything's new. My son's still trying to get his head around of what it's like to not be with his friends, because usually he plays with his friends before school, he plays with them at recess, at lunchtime, on the train on the way home, and then he usually has often some sport thing, so he is spending a big chunk of his day outside with his friends and playing. So for him, he's going through an emotional withdrawal that's now become real for him, because up until now we were on holidays. And so, it was a bit different, but now it's back and it's like he's now really getting his head around what that means. And so I need to be respectful of that he's mourning the loss of his day. Like the rest of us as adults have been kind of getting our heads around it too. Now the kids are getting their heads around it. But I did sit down and say to them, look, later on tonight, we need to talk about some boundaries around me working, because this isn't working for me and I want your help in what we can put in place so that I can make sure that I have some dedicated time each day to do my work, or that if you've got a specific question that we can put a process in place whereby when you can interrupt me or when you can't. And there's a lot of great stuff that I've actually seen out on social media, whether it be if there's a note on the door or a ribbon on the door, it means that you absolutely cannot, unless the house is burning down, you need to deal with it yourself, versus yes, you can come in if you've got a quick question, I'm happy to answer it. The other day I said to myself, I actually can't work between 10 and 2 just today because it's just not working because of all the stuff that's going on, and that was fine. So I just worked from 2 till 6 and then sort of 7 till 8, which that's not sustainable for me every day, but I have to be flexible with my hours around that. So I think the setting boundaries for the kids is don't let it go, don't let it pass. Address it by having a conversation with them, involve them in, this is my problem, this is how it's showing up for me, this is the story I'm telling myself, all that kind of language. And then you say, can you help, can we solve it together? I've got some ideas, this is what I'm thinking, but can you, is that going to work for you? What aren't I thinking of? Have you got some ideas? And I think making it a shared problem, and I think that's what you should be doing with teenagers anyway. a lot of laughter and joking too. You know, I often set boundaries through fun and laughter. Like I think I might have told you this story before, but I had the boundaries of washing up at home, and like we're trying to get our kids to just step up their level of help around the house. And one of the things they have to do is pack the dishwasher after, you know, clear the table, pack the dishwasher, and do the dishes from dinner. And I was finding that the stove is behind, and when often I would come into the kitchen, none of the stuff from the stove would be washed, like the saucepans and the fry pans and all that. And so and it was getting really annoying. And rather than cracking it, I made up a song. And just one day in the car, I said to them, I said, I've made up this new song, guys. And they're like, what is it? And I was like, look behind you when you're washing up. Look behind you when you're look behind you. And so they were like, oh. And then about 2 weeks later, they were washing up and I heard them singing it.
It worked. The process worked.
Process works. So sometimes, you know, because a lot of it, you know, it's not serious stuff. It's just maintaining boundaries around expectations, you know, so we don't have to overreact, I guess.
Great. Well, one of the things that you said, which is very powerful, is understanding that our teenagers are also grieving the loss of their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes we think it's just us as the adults, but that our teenagers are not just being difficult, they're also going through a difficult time grieving. Yeah. And just being able to understand us also allows us as parents to support them inside of what they're dealing with, and putting and co-creating together, you know, a solution for that. You know, it's not just the parents' problem, it's not just their problem, it's our shared problem that we get to work through together. It's very, very powerful.
Correct. And I think that also applies to not just boundary setting, but in general. You know, I think, you know, one of the themes for tonight's conversation was how are we looking after, you know, how am I looking after my teenagers at home? And it's about checking in and actually saying, you know, and often at night time, you know, when things are sort of quietening down and people start to think about, you know, stuff. It's how are you going? Have you got any questions? You know, are you worried about anything? Like, I think prompting those conversations, and you know, 80% of the time you probably won't get much, but it doesn't mean you should stop asking. And I think, you know, 20% of the time you might get a question. And even the other day, my daughter, I said, how are you going? And she said, well, I'm fine. She goes, because I don't really know anything. No one's telling me anything. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting that she was waiting for me to tell her something. And so then that night at dinner, I said, Abby made a really interesting comment today. You know, how is she going? Is that she didn't know anything. And so I said, have you guys got any specific questions? If you've got any concerns, is there any information that you need? And so that was, you know, that was a really good conversation. But also, you know, for some people, they might have access to external resources as well. There's a lot of really good online stuff that's coming through that's free that, you know, if teenagers are struggling, that they can also tap into, parents can tap into.
Right. You know, this is all the time we have for right now. We could talk for hours. It's very, very interesting conversation, you know, because you're dealing with, you know, people, human beings, and we just really want all of us to be empowered and, you know, work. Is there one last thing you'd like to share with the community?
I think just connect. Like, I think just take the time, and I can honestly tell you that a lot of the time I don't want to do the activities that connects me to my kids. As I said, I don't want to do family dinner, I don't want to jump on the trampoline, or I don't want to play games night, but it often ends up being the thing that gets into my gratitude journal at the end of the day. So sometimes it's like exercise. We don't want to do it, but afterwards we feel great. And I think it's so important for kids that they feel that connection, because they're so disconnected from everything else that's normal. And this is the gift of what we have at the moment is family connection. That would be my one wish and hope.
So great. In actual fact, that's what life is about. What's the point of family if it's not there to connect with, in essence. So, we could talk about the how, till the cows turn blue. Not sure that's the expression. I might have just made that up.
I think you did.
I'm very good at making things up where I think I say things that are not quite right that way. But, if the intention of even being a business person, the intention of being a parent, it's really about creating that connection that's critical in any case. So, and then connecting, if you have that as your core why, then everything else will follow from that.
It will. Yeah. Thank you, Rugare.
You're very welcome. How can people contact you?
Well, they can email me, Kate at power2process.com. I have a website, www.power2process.com. And I'm more than happy to answer any specific questions or help people in any way, breaking down problems or issues or just talking about how hard it is.
It's fantastic. I just really appreciate that you've used your evening to make this recording for the Business Summit to contribute to the community. I've been following your LinkedIn posts where you've even created schedules and, broken down how to create schedules for people working at home. And, there's been a huge uptake in the advice you've been providing. So I really appreciate you using your superpower of bringing clarity to complex problems or problems in general, not just in business, but in our everyday life, in the things that really matter to us, our family.
Thank you, Rugare. It's my pleasure. I love sharing what I can.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For everybody listening to this Business Summit, thank you for your generous listening. My team and I are there for you as you navigate through these unprecedented times. If you are interested in having a conversation with me, feel free to email me at connect@rugaregomo.com. Thank you very much.